Good afternoon and welcome to Daylilies, the Essential Perennial by Pat Trapp, Columbia County Master Gardener. We're going to learn why daylilies are so popular, as well as explore the many daylily choices. Pat will discuss daylily care as well as how and where to purchase a variety of different daylilies. She will share her passion for the perennial that blooms for weeks while others droop. Pat has been trying out and enjoying different perennial and annual flowers all her adult life. She is a member of both the Wisconsin Daylily Society and Wisconsin Peony Society. She has a long professional experience in adult education. We're happy to have you, Pat, and thank you.
Okay, thank you guys very much. I'm really impressed with how many people already have daylilies. I think you can see in the screen, it's 2/3 of the people that voted that already have some daylilies. That's really good. And hopefully you have more than just the ditch lilies. George, do you want to close that polling?
Yeah, I'm not seeing it here. Somebody else must have put it up. And then you might have to click off it on your screen to close it out of your screen.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we saw it enough. I want to thank the American Daylily Society because that's where I got a great many of these, most of the slides from. These are pictures from the National Daylily Society Convention, which the Madison group hosted just 2-3 years ago. This is actually not my yard, I wish. I have been a daylily enthusiast about 10 years. And so some of you have certainly may have known it longer than that. And if you don't know anything about daylilies and just want to see a bunch of pretty pictures this afternoon, you can just watch for that. I'm going to go over kind of what daylilies are and a little bit their differences and how you grow them. And I do have at the very end, I have how you can spread them out, dig them up, how to spread them in case yours are too, when you're ready to do that part. A daylily is different than a true lily. The true lily, the flowers come up on the stalk, and on a daylily, they're just coming from above the crown. And they have different parts, and we're going to go over that in a little more depth. These are the common daylilies that everybody sees in the ditch, often called ditch lilies, and they were originally a native of Asia, and they're invasive, but they're still pretty. I would still stop and pick bouquets of them before I had my own daylilies. This is a very common daylily and a very much frequently used one in landscape. So in somebody's subdivision, a lot of times you're going to see this one, Stella de Oro. It also comes in a purple. Ohio, that's what they put at their rest stops, is they have hundreds of those. They're very reliable, bright yellow. A trumpet lily comes off, these are the traditional lilies, they come off the stalk at a sharp right angle like that, and they're also very beautiful. In my garden, the trumpet lilies bloom just before the daylilies are peaking, so you can have certainly more than one kind. So these are true lilies here, and they also come in different heights too. And one of the reasons that daylilies are so desirable is they're very easy to grow. Whether you're a beginner or a very experienced gardener, very easy to grow. They have very few pests, and they have a very long bloom season. And especially here in the upper Midwest, they are hitting their peak and absolutely full when the bulk of the spring perennials have finished. They can tolerate some mixed shade. They're very, very tough. And if we have a hot, dry summer, they're going to do pretty good. And they thrive between a very wide range of zones, zone 10 to 4. And that's one of the reasons that they're such a popular daylily. They come in a huge amount of colors. When they very first started, they were mostly oranges and some yellows, and they are just all kinds of colors: pinks, vivid reds, green, deep crimson, all kinds of pinks, and nearly a true blue, and fabulous blends and eye-popping multicoloreds. The actual word, the scientific word for daylily is hemerocallis, and that comes from the two Greek words, one for beauty and one for day. This flower, the bloom is just one day, and that's it. It falls off, and then you have a new bloom the next day. And the clump will bloom over weeks. If you get an early, mid, and late daylily, you're going to have 6 to 8 weeks of bloom. They have a lot of diversity in color or shape. The traditional shape is round like a bagel, and they combine very, very well with other flowers. That's another reason they're very desirable to have. They look good in your garden with the rest of them. I wanted to go over a little bit how you would read the description when you're picking one out. So whether it's a catalog or you're at a daylily sale, it's going to first have the name of the cultivar, and then it has the hybridizer. Having the hybridizer is kind of like the author or having the painter having signed it. It'll have the year that it was introduced, and whether it's dormant, tetraploid, or diploid, how tall it is. I'm going to go over what dormant means in a minute. Height of the plant, the size of the flower, the number of the branches, the number of the buds per branch or scape, and the shape. And then it'll say E, M, or L. This is a common one on most plants, and that means early, mid, or late. That's the part of their season of bloom. F usually stands for fragrant, and REB stands for rebloomers. Reblooming is also characteristic in some other flowers. If it says a daylily reblooms, it usually does. If an iris says it reblooms, in my experience, it depends on the year. Some years, if you're lucky, yeah, but not every year. If a daylily says it reblooms, it usually does. So here's an example of a real description. The name of this daylily is called Bad Girls. Nate Bramer was the hybridizer. He introduced it in 2014. It's dormant, it's a tetraploid. It grows 33 inches tall. The actual blossom is 5 inches. It'll reliably have 4 branches and 24 buds on each of those. It's a mid-season, and then it'll have a description of the flower. That's called the eye zone. And its well-branched scapes are thin but easily carry the gorgeous flowers. This plant is excellent in a clump. Fertile, Nate often puts that because so many hybridizers want to know that if they're going to actually do that. And then something that I just think is fun is if it's a detailed flower catalog, it's going to have the name of the father and the mother. Just like in the Kentucky Derby and stuff, when they talk about who the stallion in a dam is and what stable it's from, it's kind of like that. And they have some wonderful names that are fun to read. So a single form looks like this, and daylilies have, if it's just a regular single form, they're going to have 3 petals and 3 sepals behind it. And there's going to be characteristics of all these different things about them that it's kind of fun to know about. And this part here, that's a different color, that's called the throat. Okay. So here's the actual anatomy of a daylily. So the roots are under the ground, and that's where it takes in the nutrients and stuff like that. The crown is where the leaves start to come up, and the leaves on a daylily are opposite each other. And then that stalk in the middle doesn't actually have leaves on it. That's called a scape. And then there's these parts of the daylily blossom, which actually vary a great deal. And then there's buds. And just remember, these fall off each day. One of it'll fall off and you have a brand new one. So they'll have more branches and they'll have a whole bunch of buds on. So there's all kinds of color patterns, and you don't have to know the specifics of these unless you were a hybridizer. And then when you're registering your daylily, you would describe these and fit it into a category. Or if it was in a competition, there might be different specifics about this. But sometimes the petals and the sepals are different colors. Sometimes there's 3 or more colors. And then they'll have sometimes bitones or reverse bitones or all of this other kind of stuff. And then they have banding, and that's a different zone of color between the throat, remembering that's the inside part, and the eye is above the throat, just like your eyes are above your throat. And then they have different definitions for all this stuff. And flowers have fashions, just like clothes have fashions. And there was a few years ago, watermarks were very popular and people were trying to hybridize for watermarks. And having it be edged, very edge of the flower is called edged or picoteed. You see on this one how the very edge is a dark purple as opposed to this. I am very fond of those kind. That can be common to try and have that, and then having different characteristics of the coloring, whether it's dotted or dusted. There's actually something called diamond dust that's currently has some daylilies have, and the light hits it different, and it actually like speckled reflects the light. So look at this one, and the edges are very wavy. When it's very heavily ruffled like that, that's called scrambled eggs or pie crust. And just like scrambled eggs, it can get too clumpy. If your flower doesn't open up really nice, they would not then introduce that one because they want it to remember, we only get a day. So it wants to open up very attractively. And on this particular one, it's got scrambled egg on the petals, but not on the sepals. Okay, so this is another lovely flower, and that has a contrasting eye. I'm sorry, throat, and then a contrasting eye here. And this one has both scrambled eggs, contrasting eye, different colored petals, and then the sepals here are yet a different one. So you can have a lot of variety in just the individual flower. This is also popular. Some people really like this when the edges have these very pointed edges. They're called teeth or tentacles. So this one has both the teeth and the ruffling, and it's mostly one color. I tended to, especially when I very first started, to go for the ones that had big, strong, contrasting colors. In your garden, it's really going to look attractive if you have some that are almost all one color. It makes your fancy ones that are bicolors and tricolors look better, and it makes your single color ones look better than if you have all one kind. These are double forms. I'm also very fond of double forms. And then there's classifications within that. Almost any flower can have a double as kind of like a genetic mistake. When you're trying to get it consistently, that's what they're gonna, if they say it's a double, it's gonna come back double every year. This one has, instead of the stamens, the little sticky out parts, this one has a little different form for that. That's also attractive. So this one's more obvious. See how that's all curled up instead of having the stamens. And that's called a petaloid. Gorgeous color in that one. Okay, so this one's got a double, and it's got a hose and hone, and it's got a peony form because the hybridizer apparently was really lucky or didn't know when to stop. I talked about the double flowers. Okay, one thing about lilies that I actually didn't think of till last year. They are sensitive to black walnut trees. Black walnut trees are beautiful, but they are the ones that secrete that one, I think it's pronounced juglone, and it stunts many different flowers and vegetables. Not everything, but daylilies are in the list of the ones that it does stunt. Also, if you happen to have a pet that eats weird things and would eat it enough, lilies are toxic, both the traditional lilies and daylilies. If you just have a dog that goes by and once in a while strips a flower to drive you crazy, that's a different ballgame. This is called spider forms. This is a very popular with some growers, and it's very narrow petals and sepals, And some of these, the definition means that the petals are at least 4 times as long as they are wide. The really long ones, if you can straighten them out, they're 15 inches long. And all of these also, daylilies don't ever need to be staked. So even though they look like something that might be real delicate and airy and look beautiful blowing in the wind, you still don't need to stake them. That one's, this hybridizer really loves names from Star Wars. So sometimes you get the unusual forms simply because they have a cool name. So Hotter Than the 4th of July is from a friend's garden. And that's a little more definition there. This one has, see how these get real curved and narrow and then they get wider again at the end? That's a specific characteristic they were looking for. So some are curled way back and then these got wider on the end. There's a huge amount of variety available. There is also, when we're talking about fashion, there is a big, some hybridizers are just on an unending thing to try and get true blue in a flower. True blue doesn't actually occur very often in nature, but they haven't hit it yet, but they've gotten close in some flowers. And that's what they'll keep hybridizing for, is to try and get a true blue. The other thing that I'm going to tell you is when I very first started with the Daylilies Society, I had signed up for the American Daylily Society because I thought you had to. I was wrong. And I got their periodical. And in the very first issue that I had received, there was an article about true white daylilies, and that there isn't a true white, that most of them have a cream or a light green or something in it. And I was reading this article and they had a scale that they would rank it on 0 to 5. And I thought, these people are nuts. And then it was about 3 years later, I was at a Daylily meeting and the man who wrote the article about the true white daylilies was coming to, I'm sorry about the phone. The man who wrote the article about the true white was coming to speak. 3 years later, I'm going, oh man, the guy that wrote about the white daylilies is coming. So I was as far gone as them. So this is also about sculpted, and this is the different texture and shape. That these are very, very heavily textured. And they have some really, I haven't tried growing any of these, but some of them just look a little weird. And so there's different things you can look for in these. This one I think is just gorgeous. And I do like, this part here is called the mid-rib. And sometimes you have more texture in that, or that can be a different color. That one's the textured feathered fancy, which is very, and some of these you're looking at really close up, and that's the one other thing I wanted to talk about. The foliage on daylilies is very attractive. It only comes in green. There is no foliage that's blue-green or dark purple like you can find in some of the sedums. But the daylily leaves have a very pretty arch. And they go from slender to grass-like or very wide or nearly corn-like. The very tallest daylily are, there's one that's 5 feet tall. It has tower in the name of it. Most of them are in the 6 inches to 3 feet area. But that foliage is going to look very attractive in your garden. Then the habit of it is whether it's dormant, evergreen, or deciduous. Dormant means that it dies completely back every winter. Pretty much everything in Wisconsin, except evergreen trees, is going to die back, except for the ones that Xana talked about. So the people that are growing daylilies in like Florida or the East Coast, they may be looking for evergreen or semi-evergreen. But if you order that kind and try and grow it here, it's going to be dormant. It's going to grow back. It's going to die every year. I mean, not die, but the plant will die back. Okay, then these are different patterns that you can have. So sometimes it'll be a very soft color change. Sometimes it's very demarcated, very intense color change, and it'll have multiple color changes within the blossom. Also, some people are very aware of in the stamens and stuff like that, they notice that. So some people who are daylily enthusiasts will be checking their flowers 3 times a day to see, they'll also, the hybridizers, they look to see if it maintains its flower. I mean, sorry, its color. If this color is just as strong at 5 o'clock at night as it was at 5 o'clock in the morning. The watermark is this here, and it's a zone outside of the throat that's lighter in color than the petal color. Space Coast Pattern Plus is this flower, and that hybridizer often has Space Coast in the name, but it has very sharp demarcation in color. It doesn't like blend in gradually. His colors are always very, very vivid. Okay, what you're going to look for in a daylily is the foliage. And when you get a flower catalog, they don't show you a picture of the plant with no flowers on it. You're always going to usually get close-up of the beautiful flowers. But you should get plants that you find the foliage attractive for, because when you look at your garden, the main color you're going to see is actually green. Hopefully it's green and not all brown, but foliage is actually what you're seeing most of the year. And that's one of the reasons daylilies are so attractive, is they have such a nice shape. Vigor and stamina, daylilies are quite hardy, and they grow well under many conditions without being invasive. They don't take over, you don't have to transplant them every 3 years, and they don't get very many diseases. When you're picking one out, the scape, that's that stalk that the buds come on, the scape has to have adequate strength to support the buds and flowers, and you shouldn't have to stake it. And I haven't seen any daylilies you have to stake. So a hybridizer, if he can have, he might have this plant that he's trying to develop, and it has gorgeous flowers, but if the scapes don't hold it up well, they're not going to register it. Okay, so branching and buds, when I look for one, I like to have lots and lots of flowers, so I look for one that has multiple scapes, and then it'll also list how many buds it usually has on each scape. So if it has 4 to 5 scapes and it's got 20 buds, you're going to get 100 flowers out of that plant. Remembering they're only one a day. You may have more than one on a day, so sometimes you're going to have 4, 10, or 12 plants all on that, flowers all on that same plant. And then you can have, this is what I liked, and when I first started I got that. The throat was a contrasting color and it had the edging. I was a real sucker. I have lots of those. They also come in miniatures if you like to have the little short ones. These grow, the flowers are less than 3 inches across. The plants are usually less than 6 to 8 inches tall. They can be very nice in the front of your garden, front of your flower bed. And they tend to reproduce a little oftener, a little faster than the standard daylilies do. Okay, then this one has, it's called a polymerous. It's because it has more petals and sepals than a standard one would have. And I told you about the blue daylilies. There's several hybridizers that are trying to come up with a blue hybrid daylily. There's also a man from Wisconsin who moved to the Ohio area. He exclusively hybridizes purple daylilies, and if you're real fond of purple flowers, he has some gorgeous ones. And now we're going to look at some other gardens. This is, I wanted to make sure I mentioned about the right place, right plant, which goes for almost any perennial. If you put it somewhere where it gets the right amount of sun and the right conditions for it, it'll usually do well. this one, every other daylily I have in this whole area is bicolored or tricolored, but because these clear one-colored daylilies are next to it, it makes these daylilies look better, and it makes the ones next to it look better. If you're going to a plant sale or something, and if you see one that makes you say, ah, you should just get it if it's safe for our zone and try it somewhere. And daylilies are relatively easy to transplant. That one is from my friend's garden, hotter than the 4th of July. She really likes UFOs. This is a gorgeous pink with the ruffled edge, the slight light green throat, and the mid-rib color there. And it's very prolific. It has lots of flowers. This is to show you how pleasant it can look in combination, whether it's with your garden art or see back here, that's hostas back there. It will grow, some of them will do fine in partial shade, not in deep shade. They would grow in deep shade, but they won't flower much. This has a lot of different attractive characteristics there for that one. This is very close to a true white. And look at all the buds that one has. Okay, this one's called Stupid in Love, and it's got the edging. It has different sepals there than the petals, the contrasting throat from the eye zone here, and lots of buds. So you're going to get lots more flowers. Rainbow Radiance has a slight watermark there, the purple. I should call it lavender instead of purple. That's a double, and it's got the pie crust or the scrambled egg edging there. Oy Vey is a very pleasant pink, and that's a very heavily double. This is actually at Old Brick Gardens, and I've got there's going to be a handout that gets sent out that has a list of places that it's very easy to get daylilies from. One of the best places to get perennials from is usually from your local perennial plant society, or in our case for daylilies, the Daylily Society, because this is stuff people grow close to wherever you live, if you're close enough to go there. And there's also knowledgeable people there that know about this stuff. And at the Daylily sale for the Madison group, there's an 8x10 picture of each daylily that they're have for sale. Besides the picture, it'll have the complete description. There's people that can tell you about it. The Green Bay area, if we have people from there, has one, a sale a little later than us because they're farther north. Milwaukee has one, and then there's other area ones. When we're talking about how much they cost, you can get lots and lots of daylilies pretty much for between $5 to $10. The highest they're ever going to go is you get an absolute brand new introduction. So it's kind of like buying a designer coat. If you were going to buy a Diane von Furstenberg or whatever her name is, brand new dress, she's not going to have 100 of those for sale. She's going to have 1 or 2. And when you have a brand new introduction, they don't have as many, and it also might be a charity auction or something, but that's the only reason it would cost that much. Most of the time you can get very gorgeous daylilies for $5 to $10. The most expensive ones will be brand new introductions. If you really like how it looks, you aren't going to care if it was introduced in the year 2000 or introduced in the year 2015. And there is not much problem with disease or hardiness in the ones that were grown in the Midwest. So sometimes in perennials, like a newer cultivar might have more disease resistance. That's not as much an issue in daylilies because they don't have much problem with it. If you're brand new to it, I wouldn't spend a whole huge amount of money for a daylily. Daylily enthusiasts, they know that they're nuts and they know that they're a little over the board, and they still enjoy it, that's fine. And they like to know who the hybridizers are, and they often know the lineage of their plants. And they'll be the ones that are looking to see if it's different in the AM or the PM. And I didn't know that people did this for several years. So some of the people, when people talk about deadheading, they can do this for other flowers, but in daylilies, the daylily will just fall off. They actually go around at the end of the day and pick off all the blossoms so that at the beginning of the day, it's all a fresh start and they're all absolutely beautiful. So on when we had the National Daylily Society convention, 5 of us went into one of the display gardens. I picked 2 bags. We had 10 bags of flower blossoms like this. It's just gorgeous. Okay, so the best way to get daylilies is, for me, I'm very frugal. The best way is to get them from a friend. So you say, when you split that up, I would really like some, and they'll probably give you some. And best to buy local. The Wisconsin Daylily sale is every August, and it is across from Old Brook Gardens. If you're anywhere near Madison, you have heard of Old Brook Gardens. So there's a park right across from there, and that's where it's held. We have big tents. Then the Bad Buds is the Green Bay area Daylily Society. So the Madison one is August 22nd and 23rd. This is listed on your handout. This year, Green Bay is having theirs September 11th. I don't know when Milwaukee has theirs. Solaris Farms is in Wisconsin, and they have a wonderful daylily and peony selection. And they actually make a living, that's their business. There is a thing called Northern Mecca, and they have a website, and Northern Mecca has this whole cluster of hybridizers in Ohio, about 10, 12 of them that are all within driving distance of each other. And they have this weekend in July that you can actually go there and see them all and order them, and they'll dig them up. Some of them, depending upon how they are in their bloom, they'll dig up right while you're there during Mecca, and some they'll ship to you if it's a later one. And then mail order, Jung's has some nice ones. The Portage Nursery, I'm assuming, has some. Okay, so that's where you can get them from. This is some more nice pictures to look at. When do you plant these? So the plant sales are held just after flowering because that's when people can dig them a lot. You can certainly also do that in early spring. So July, August, you want to do it by mid-September so they get a chance to start before the fall. But you can also do it in early spring. So if you have a friend digging them up, that's a good time too. Daylilies you can move almost any time. Ideally, it's not right during peak bloom, but also they look absolutely gorgeous with your other perennials. They do a good job of playing with others. That one, I just like the name, and look at all those tentacles on that one. Dreams of Destiny has a lot of scrambled egg, near true white. This is a reminder that your main color in your flower garden when you're looking at this is green. So that back there is a peony. These are the daylilies. I don't know exactly what that is, but your garden's going to look prettier if you have some that have an arch, some that have different leaves, textures, forms. It's not just height that you're looking for to have a pleasant visual garden. Okay, so when you're going to plant a daylily, like most other perennials, you dig a hole that's larger than the root mass. You make a slight mound in the center of the hole and then put the plant in on it with the roots spread out on all sides of the mound. And you're going to plant these about as deep as they grew originally. And you can see that by the white where it was under the earth when you're looking at the base of it. You don't put the crown more than an inch below the surface, and then work the soil around. Just like other perennials, you want to firm the soil and then water it. You want to avoid air pockets around the roots because that can affect how the plant grows. And when the water is soaked in, finish filling the soil and leave a slight depression around the plant for the rest of the water. When you do water your plants, I'm going to keep talking while you're looking at pictures. when you do water the plants, it's good not to do overhead watering with daylilies. If you put a sprinkler hose on top of this, you might get spots on your plants. It's better to have a drip hose than a sprinkler one. And okay, so the care, they don't need much. So if we have really dry years, you're going to do some watering. Once they're established, about an inch a week of water like others, and you want the water to reach the roots. And if you just transplanted it, it's more important to make sure it has water to get started with. They like deep watering, but just like any other perennial, they're not that picky. But the overhead watering can cause the open blooms to spot, and watering in the evening, remember they only open one day, that can cause spots on the next day's bloom. And they don't want to be soggy. Party Pinafore, I always thought that one was really pretty. This one is from the friend that likes UFOs a lot, and that one I just think has gorgeous marking there, that star-shaped marking. Bob Faulkner, the people that raised hybridizers sometimes will name things after this. This was a person that got started because of Bob Faulkner. He was very, very well known in the Daylily community. He was the one that helped to organize Northern Mecca, which has been going on for quite a few years now. And I had done this the presentation I put together Bob Faulkner died last month from COVID. So that was a hard one. This is a double. And this is just showing the combination of, this is on the edge of what is probably a somewhat shady area. And the combination, it looks nice with your other plants. Breaking with Tradition is a double. Aurora Blues, I wanted to put that in about hybridizing. So if you are interested in hybridizing, this book is called Hybridizing 101. You can get it on Amazon for $10. And it's written by the lady who was just our previous president. And it's very explanatory. I don't know how to hybridize. This is a true lily. I wanted to put this in. If you have true lilies and you want to have bring them in for a bouquet, if you cut this right here when you bring them in, this brown dust will not fall on your flower and make the bouquet not as pretty. Since we are Master Gardener volunteers, we have to talk a little bit about possible diseases. Daylily rust is caused by a fungus, and if you have good air circulation and you don't absolutely crown your plant and minimize overhead watering, you won't have that, and avoid excessive nitrogen and inadequate potassium nutrition. I've never seen this. It's just, that's what was there when I looked up the diseases. Daylilies are not susceptible to the red lily beetle. Apparently the red lily beetle is out on the East Coast, but moving towards the Midwest. And it traditional lilies, the trumpets and the orientals and stuff are susceptible to red lily beetle, but daylilies are not. I'm hoping it never gets to ours, but it's moving that way. Dark flowers are always eye-catching. When people are walking around your garden, the dark ones are often, especially when they're this dark, they're the ones they're going to comment on. If you are only home at night and come home from work late, or your garden is visually quite a ways away from the house, light, very, very light colored and white flowers are going to show up more. So if you're gone all day and only home, you know, part of Saturday and Sunday, you might want to consider that too when you're picking which colors that you pick for your flowers. That one I thought has got gorgeous coloring in there, and it's got a watermark. Primal Scream is a in-your-face orange. Labeling. If you put names on your flowers, it's going to be more fun for you, because if you know the name of it, it's better than just saying a pretty one. And also, I have tried that where you write with the permanent marker on the little plastic knife and stick that in, and that only lasts a season. It will not last till the next year. So then the next year you just have a bunch of little plastic knives all over your gardens and you don't remember what the names are. Okay, that is, I'm going to go on to, I thought this was a pretty cool name. This is Riot on the Kindergarten Bus. Okay, so I wanted to, and we talked about that you can have the combination with other of your perennials and it'd be very attractive. And they will take, some of them, especially the lighter color ones, sometimes will grow very well in partial shade. And there's some gorgeous red ones. Okay, and this one is kind of showing you all the different textures and how attractive they each look because of the contrast with each other. Those different hostas look more attractive because of the contrast. That's one of those very heavily textured ones. And you can just have so many different colors of them. So this is actually somebody's garden in front of their house where we were going to dig daylilies before the sale. You can tell the daylily enthusiasts when you're driving by their house because they have no front yard. They have got it completely taken over because they planted so many flowers. Okay, in a couple minutes, I just wanted to show you pictures of how to dig up and spread your perennials. When you're digging them up because your clump is so big or you want to share them, you can dig it with a shovel and dig it all the way around to get it loose. It's actually easier if you have a garden fork to do that, but you dig all the way around. This is not me. These are pictures I got from somewhere to lift it out. And this is going to be a big clump. And if it's heavily wet, there, you know, a lot of earth in it, you can spray it off with your garden hose just so it's easier to see where the roots are so that you can separate it. So you don't have to leave all that because you're going to try and get the earth off it to spread it out. So that's why it's spraying with the hose to get the dirt out. And then you can either cut it with a knife down there. The best way, if you have two garden forks, is you put them both in there back to back and then spread them apart. And that really works very well. But you can cut them, or most of the time you can just pull them apart. And you're going to want to try and get to 2 fans when you're transplanting it. You don't have to do it individually. You don't have to do a big clump. You're going to try and get 2 fans like that. And that's what, and then I went over how to plant them. Okay,